A Field Guide to the Feral and Forgotten. Compiler's Preface. What follows has been assembled from field notes, hearsay, deathbed confessions, and the marginalia of ecclesiastical manuscripts so water-damaged they were presumed unreadable. The creatures herein are not the sanitized spirits of children's literature. They are older than the taxonomies we have tried to impose upon them, and they regard those taxonomies with something between amusement and hunger. They bite. Several of them sting. Many of them are capable of far worse, accomplished with a politeness that should alarm you more than savagery would. You will note that this guide includes a cartographic section. The map that follows is not meant to tell you where they are. It is meant to show you the shape of the territory they have always occupied, the territory that predates our place names and our fences. Consider it orientation, not navigation. Do not go looking. Cartographic reference. The territories. The map below depicts a composite territory assembled from overlapping folklore geographies. Not a place you can visit by road, but one you may recognize if you have ever felt watched at the edge of a tree line after dusk. It is rendered in the style of a corrupted inner earth cartograph, a roughly circular landmass, viewed from above at a slight oblique angle, suggesting both a surface survey and something subterranean bleeding through. Composite territory, the hollow country and adjacent lands scale, approximate orientation, do not trust. Part 1. The Feral Fairy. Those who bite and sting. Hostile, venomous. The fairy. Not the nice kind, not the kind with wishes. The folklore fairy of the popular imagination. Helpful, luminous, inclined toward godmotherhood. Is a sanitizing revision so thorough it constitutes a cover-up. The creatures encountered in field notes across 4 centuries of rural record-keeping bear no resemblance to that invention. They're small in the way that wasps are small, not harmless because of it. They bite with serrated mouth parts designed for tearing fungal skin from the substrate of the forest floor, and they will use this equipment on you without hesitation or remorse. The sting, for they also sting, a different appendage entirely, produces a numbness that begins at the puncture site and works inward. Several recorded subjects reported that the numbness reached their memories before it reached their extremities. They congregate in threshold spaces, the moment before dawn, the edge of a property line, the inside of mirrors. They are drawn to music, particularly music played badly and with great sincerity, which they find irresistible and will follow for miles. Do not play the fiddle alone at night. They will come. They will stay. They will rearrange your house in small ways that you will not notice until you have gone entirely wrong. Field precautions iron in all pockets. No music after dark. Do not thank them. Gratitude functions as an invitation. If one enters your home through a mirror, cover the mirror. Do not attempt to remove it yourself. Part 2. The Eternal and the Equine. Centaurs. Eternal territorial. Centaur. The eternal riders, those who were first horse. The canonical illustration places the centaur as half man above, half horse below, a convenient fiction. In truth, the centaur is not a hybrid. They are old enough that the question of which half is primary has been answered by age alone. They are horse. The human torso and face are the younger addition, the evolutionary experiment, the appendage. When centaurs gather and believe themselves unobserved, they orient toward one another horse first. It is their faces that meet. Their human eyes are secondary senses. It is the pricked ear, the widened nostril, the tension in the hindquarters that constitutes the true attention. They are eternal, not immortal in the sense of being unkillable, but in the sense that they have never, as a species, experienced a period that was not this one. They do not age in any direction. They remember things that occurred before the current configuration of the continents. This makes conversation with them difficult to sustain and deeply disorienting. They answer questions about the present with information about geological processes. They are not being evasive. That is simply where the relevant context begins. They are not violent by default, but they are territorial by instinct, and their territory is measured in days of riding rather than acres. Do not camp in a meadow that smells of them. Do not attempt to shoe them. Do not, under any circumstances, Ask them about the future. They do not experience time in that direction, and the attempt to explain this to you will take longer than you have. Field notes move aside on any path they are using. Leave offerings of good grain at the edge of meadows you intend to pass through. They are not grateful, but they are observant, and observation from something eternal is preferable to its alternative. Part 3. The Apparitional. Milkmaids. Ghostly liminal do not follow. The milkmaid. The pale dairymaid, she of the morning fog, the beckoner. Encountered primarily at dawn in low-lying ground near water, fields, fens, the fog-held valley at the edge of farms. The milkmaid apparition is not a ghost in the conventional sense. She is not haunting a location because something happened to her there. She is haunting a function, the labor of the early morning, the repetitive and necessary work of tending what must be tended before the world wakes. She carries her pail. She moves with the patient rhythm of someone who has done this 10,000 times. She does not look up. The danger is in the looking. If you observe her from a distance, she is simply there, mist white, slightly luminous at the edges, moving toward the barn that is no longer standing. If she looks up and sees you, the situation changes. She does not chase. She does not threaten. She simply holds your gaze, and you will find yourself walking toward her without having decided to, across wet ground, into the fog that thickens around her as you approach. Those who have been retrieved from this approach report having felt entirely purposeful. They were going to help. They were needed. They did not question where the barn was. If encountered, do not look directly. Walk the long way around. If she has already seen you and you feel the pull, name something you are going home to, specifically. A person, a meal, a task. Specificity breaks the functional haunting. She holds labor in her gaze. Your own labor, named aloud, reminds you that you have some. Part 4. The Ancient Practitioners. Witches. Variable do not assume. Witches. The craft holders seem workers, those who keep the count. To compile a single entry for witches is an error of taxonomy comparable to compiling a single entry for humans. There are hedge witches who work in the boundary between garden and wild, who bargain with plants and keep their word about it, whose cottages smell of damp wool and something sharper underneath. There are sea witches who have made agreements with currents and do not age in the conventional direction, growing younger in some features as they grow stranger in others. There are bone witches whose practice is forensic and funerary. They are the ones called in when something died wrong and the dying has continued. There are market witches who work in commerce and exchange, whose prices are always fair and always somehow more than you intended to pay. There are witches who inherited the practice and witches who arrived at it through catastrophe, and the distinction matters enormously to them and very little to the outcomes. What they share, a relationship to the seams of things, the place where one condition becomes another, where night becomes day, where living becomes dead, where love becomes obligation. They work in these transitions because transitions are where the material is loose enough to work. Do not mistake them for service providers. They are not. They are craftspeople with standards you will not always find convenient. Protocol: approach directly. State your business plainly. Do not embellish. Do not omit. They already know the part you are considering leaving out, and the omission costs more than the disclosure would have. Part 5. The Diverse and the Hidden. Variable. Elves. As diverse as we are. More so. The mistake is assuming coherence. Elves are to each other roughly what Danes are to Peruvians. Related by distant category, meaningfully different in everything else. There are court elves who find humans tedious but politically useful. There are feral wood elves who have not voluntarily spoken to anything bipedal in 6 generations. There are elves who have been in cities for so long they have urban instincts. Territory marking through property, hierarchy through proximity to resources. They age, but not on our schedule. An elf who looks 30 may be deciding whether a century is long enough to hold a grudge. The answer is usually yes. Note: never assume one elf knows another. The assumption offends universally, regardless of the differences in everything else. Hostile. Goblins. The scuttlers told takers, the grudge keepers. Organized by grievance rather than hierarchy. A goblin alone is manageable, unpleasant, acquisitive, prone to nipping fingers if you are not paying attention to where they are. A goblin holding a grudge is an institution. They remember every slight with the precision of a legal record, and they collect interest. They are not evil in the theological sense. They are litigious in the biological sense. If you take something from goblin territory, even something that appears abandoned, even something that appears to be a rock, you now owe them, and they will not remind you until they are ready to collect. If indebted, pay immediately, whatever they ask, if it is within your power. Delayed payment accrues compound interest in forms you do not want itemized. Dangerous. Trolls. The stone-kind bridge holders, the patient. Trolls are geological in temperament and occasionally in composition. The older ones have developed lichens. They think at a speed that renders most human interaction invisible to them. You pass through their attention the way a mayfly passes through a season. This is good news and bad news. Good. They do not notice most of what you do. Bad. The things they do notice, they notice completely and permanently. Trolls do not forget. They have been keeping records of certain crossings since before the crossing was a road. Pay the toll. Do not ask what the toll buys you. It buys the crossing. That is all. That is everything. Bridges, gates, gaps. If something large and slow appears to be resting near a threshold, do not assume it is a rock. Pay before you cross. Always. Mischievous precise. Gnomes. The understewards, route keepers, the inventory. Every account of gnomes emphasizes their relationship to things, specifically to the cataloging and correct storage of things. They are not hoarders, a common mischaracterization, they are archivists. The distinction is that hoarders accumulate, gnomes organize. The problem is their organizational schema is not human and cannot be learned. Things placed in their care will be returned to you in perfect condition and completely wrong arrangement, categorized according to criteria you did not know the objects possessed. They are also very small and they resent being found. Not because they are shy. Because they are busy. If you find Onedo, not pick it up. Do not tell anyone where you saw it. Leave immediately. They will consider this correct behavior and will not follow. Lethal predatory. Vampires. The sanguine old knight, the beautiful debt. What makes the vampire genuinely dangerous is not the hunger. It is the patience behind the hunger. They have had centuries to study the specific vulnerabilities of whatever period they are operating in, and they are excellent students. The contemporary vampire is not lurking in a castle. They are cultivating exactly the kind of social position from which hunger is most easily fed and most easily concealed. The pallor is managed. The charm is engineered. The relationship between them and the preferred company is not predator and prey so much as it is landlord and tenant. They maintain the appearance of mutual benefit while structuring the arrangement so that the cost is always yours. They are not allergic to garlic. They are simply extremely tired of being told that they are. Recognition. They are better than you at whatever you think you are good at, and they make you feel this without condescension. That specific feeling is the tell. Unstable cyclical. Werewolves. The skinned lunatics, accurate, the returned. The condition is not a curse in the way that word implies external imposition. It is closer to a second nature that surfaces on schedule, the way certain medical conditions surface cyclically, the way grief surfaces on anniversaries. The wolf is not a separate entity inhabiting the same body. It is the same entity in a state where different things are salient. What they want in wolf state is what they always wanted. The form simply removes the social architecture that usually contains the wanting. They remember everything. This is the hardest part. Not the violence of it, but the memory of being something you could not govern, and the morning after, and the ones who are still there. If you know Onedo, not ask what it is like. Do not offer to fix it. Do not be afraid of them on the 28 other days. They know the count better than you do. Unknown, do not approach. Mothman. The red-eyed harbingers, those who watch the bridge. Every documented encounter with a Mothman precedes a catastrophe by somewhere between hours and weeks. This has led to the comfortable assumption that movement cause catastrophes, that the witnessing is a warning issued by something malevolent, a creature that feeds on disaster and arrives hungry. The field notes do not support this. What they support, accumulated across enough accounts, is something stranger and harder to sit with. The movmen appear to be grieving. They appear before the bridge collapses, before the mine floods, before the fire reaches the town, and in every account that describes them at length rather than in the shock of first sight, the witness describes not menace but something that reads as unbearable foreknowledge. The red eyes are red the way eyes are red when what they have seen cannot be unseen. They are witnesses, not authors. They have already watched this happen. What they are witnessing, and from what vantage point, and whether they perceive time in a sequence we would recognize, these questions remain open. They do not speak. They do not respond to reproach. They watch. Then the disaster comes, and they are not there anymore, and the people who saw them spend the rest of their lives uncertain whether they were warned or simply given the particular cruelty of knowing that something was coming and not knowing what. If witness said you will not be able to convince anyone of what you saw until after the event. Document the time, location, and your exact position. This will not help you. It will help whoever comes after you, trying to establish a pattern from the fragments that remain. Compiler's note: this volume remains incomplete. New entries are added as they are survived.